The Boston Celtics are your NBA champions. What they teach us about how the Magic need to build their team, plus the draft prospects who fit what that need is on today's episode of Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is June 18th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the Boston Celtics are NBA champions, but don't be so upset that the Celtics won. That's actually a good thing for the Magic because it teaches the Magic exactly what they need to do next. I'll explain that coming up here. Plus, the draft prospects who do everything because that's what the Celtics do. We'll get to that on today's episode of Locked On Magic. But before we do any of that, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. The Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. I will save the 0-0 statement, the 0-0 argument that I make every year at the end of the NBA Finals. We'll save that for later in the week. We got more important things to get to, and obviously that episode that we're all know that hope is eternal, that anything can happen next season. That's an episode you do when you're at the bottom of the standings, when you're just dreaming of what's possible, when you don't know what it is actually going to take to be successful. This was obviously a very different season for the Orlando Magic. It's obviously a very different kind of year, and we're entering this offseason, and we're going to talk about the draft here and maybe a little bit about free agency. This is a different kind of offseason for the Magic. There's no getting around it. It is different today. And what the Magic will develop into, who they will become, it's not about being 0-0 anymore. We can clearly see what the Magic need to get over the hump, to get to their next step. We know what they have. We know what they're capable of doing. And now it's about layering on the right pieces on top. And look, this is a copycat league. Everyone is going to watch what we saw in the NBA Finals, the teams that made it, why the Cavs beat the Magic even, and figure out what are we going to need to do to compete. Because at the end of the day, this Boston Celtics team is not going anywhere. All their key players are under contract unless the Celtics suddenly want to get under the tax. This is the same team that's coming back next year. If the Magic want to win a championship in 2025, and maybe that's a little far-fetched, but if the Magic want to win a championship in 2025, 2026, 2027, if they want to win a title before 2030, odds are they're going to have to go through the Boston Celtics. Odds are they're going to have to do the same thing that Boston did to Dallas that made them so difficult to defend and so difficult to break down. That led to a 16-3 playoff run. The champions point us in the direction that the league is going and the direction that things are heading. And the good news for the Orlando Magic is it sure feels like what the Celtics did and how the Celtics developed and grew their team is exactly the way the Magic want to grow and develop their team. It's exactly the way the Magic want to be and how they want to be. The Boston Celtics essentially ran a 5-out offense. And this is the one area the Magic obviously don't run their system like the Celtics. They're not a 5-out offense. But they sure like playing Wendell Carter on the perimeter. They sure like trying to leave the paint open. They sure like having players who can play multiple positions and multiple roles. Boston has a point guard in Derek White and Drew Holiday. But Drew Holiday's also hanging around the dunker spot. Jason Tatum is the one initiating offense. Jaylen Brown is the one initiating pick and rolls. They're running 3-4 pick and rolls with each other. They're ghosting screens and slipping screens with non-traditional screen setters. You're not ever going to copy what Boston did. And obviously, at the end of the day, it still comes down to talent. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are two of the very best players in this league. Magic have one of those probably in Paolo Banchero. Franz Wagner may still have to work his way up there, but he's knocking on the door being an all-star. What the Celtics have are 5 players who do it all, who have versatility both in their ability to guard at times 1 through 5. Al Horford stepping out on Luka Doncic and being unafraid of that, trusting to help and trusting his own defensive ability. That's as much a part of who the Celtics are and why the Celtics have the gold trophy as anything else. The Magic want to be that team. They're running Paolo Banchero as a point guard. Franz Wagner as a playmaker. They ran Markelle Fultz a lot at the dunker spot. Jalen Suggs is running all over the place. And the Magic may not be able to spread the floor or shoot threes in the same way that Boston can. That's a big part of this, no doubt about it. But this is where the league is heading. Skill wins over everything. And you need players with, as Jeff Altman loves to say, a high basketball IQ that can make reads and decisions. You need players who are willing to do things that their position normally doesn't ask them to do. I remember asking Cole Anthony about this early last season when I noticed him setting a lot more screens and running a lot more pick and rolls as a guard. And I remember asking him, what's it like learning how to screen? Because that's not something guards typically have to do. That's what the league is asking of its players more and more these days. And if there's hope for what the Magic are building, it's that they already hold this philosophy. Paolo Banchero said it really well in that interview with the Washington Post. He does not believe the Magic need a point guard in the traditional sense. They don't need someone that's going to pound the ball into the dirt and just play quarterback and decide who gets the ball when. That's not how the league works anymore. What he wants is a table setter, someone to relieve the pressure. At the end of the day, what the Magic need are 5 players who can make decisions, 5 players who could play on the ball, 5 players who can attack in their own way, but attack nonetheless. 5 players who are unselfish and willing to move it and keep that ball moving. That's who the Boston Celtics are. That's why they were far and away the best team in the league this season. That is why they are the NBA champions. And when we look at the players the Magic are looking at, whether it's in the draft, which we will do in a moment, or free agency, which we'll maybe touch on a little bit, what the Magic are looking for is this versatility. They are looking for players who do it all, who contribute at every facet, who defend every position. Why is size so important for the Magic? It's because it enables them to switch. It enables them to create matchup advantages because there are just not a lot of 6'10" guys that pass the ball and play make the way that Paolo Banchero does. That's what makes this Magic team unique. Jason Tatum 6'8", Paolo 6'10", Jaylen Brown 6'7", Franz is 6'9". The Magic want to be a bigger, longer version of what Boston is. That is the blueprint to success. That is the blueprint to a title. And look, the Magic still have a lot of work to do. I'm not sitting here predicting the Magic are going to win a championship next year or that all of a sudden everything's going to click. There is still a lot of work to do. But it's clear the direction the league is going. Why the Celtics were successful, why the Celtics have been successful, and why things finally came together this year. You couldn't stop Boston. Because if you plugged one hole, another one opened. And this team, the Celtics team, when they were at their best, always found the gap to get through. And that's why the Celtics are NBA champions. That's why the Celtics have banner 18. That's why it's quote unquote different here. The Magic want to be that too. And the Magic are seemingly working closer and closer to get there. When we come back, we will chat about draft prospects that do a little bit of everything. Searching for versatility in the draft class. We'll celebrate our Draft Tuesday coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at FanDuel. There it is. Summertime means baseball. The NBA finals are done. The Stanley Cup final could end today. And you can bet on it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from who's going to win next year's NBA championship to WNBA to so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. I know you're interested because it's so early. What are the odds that the Orlando Magic win the championship next year? Well, FanDuel has a set on that. Currently, the Magic are running at plus 8,000. That's 800 to 1 odds to win the championship. That's behind the Sacramento Kings, ahead of the Atlanta Hawks. That's actually, looking at it now, the worst among all teams that made the playoffs last year. Apparently, the odds makers not believing in the Magic. If you want to jump on that and make some big money when the Magic hoists the trophy next June, FanDuel is your place to go. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to add that big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day to celebrate the championship, to get the lowdown on both the Celtics and the Mavericks and all the big stories in sports. Check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories in sports from the local experts who know their team best. Locked On Sports Day brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. That's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I will reiterate that as well because I feel like it's really important to do this. For the celebration, check out our friend John Corrales over at Locked On Celtics. I still think it'll be a celebration. Dallas had a really good year, a really special year. They're not going anywhere either. Check out our friend Nick Angstad over at Locked On Mavericks. They both do an incredible job covering their teams, had such fantastic seasons. Cannot recommend those shows enough. If you don't catch them on the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel, go directly to their feeds and hear the latest on the NBA Finals and the breakdown of those games. But today is Draft Tuesday. We are coming up on 8 days away from the NBA draft. The season's over. Offseason has officially begun. Teams can actually begin negotiating with their own free agents. They can't sign anything until July 6th. But you could begin negotiating with their own free agents right now. As I'm recording this here at 12:45 in the morning, nothing's been signed or nothing's been agreed to. Nothing can get signed until July 6th. But let's get back to our Draft Tuesday. And I want to focus on kind of the purpose of this draft and kind of this bigger idea of what the Magic are looking for. The Magic want players who do everything. At the end of the day, positions don't matter. Yes, they need a player who can kind of coordinate and organize a team. They need another attacker. They need skills. It's not about positions. You got to be able to defend. That's the bigger thing. Positions are more about who you can defend than where you play offensively. Everything else is fudgy. And so, it's not about finding a point guard. It's about finding a guard who can shoot, defend, play make. It's about skills. Your skill tree matters so much more than what position you play. You can mix and match positions in this league really easily now. Not every team has that bruising back to the basket center that requires you to have a 7-footer who weighs 250 pounds because you're going to be taking a beating all game. That's not how the league works anymore. It is truly about skills. And so we need to look at the players in this draft who have that skill set. Now, obviously, we've talked about a big one in Tristan da Silva. I don't want to rehash too much about Tristan da Silva, but Tristan da Silva probably going to be gone by the time the Magic pick. But around the area where the Magic are drafting, he is the guy that kind of embodies what I'm thinking and what I'm looking for. He is, 6'8", 6'9", good length, solid player, doesn't do more than he's capable of doing, has improved dramatically as a three-point shooter, really solid three-point shooter, better passer than I think his numbers suggest. He's really high on that list. Another guy to look at, and I don't think he's going to be there, but I did see some mock drafts have him falling to where the Magic are picking, and if this happens, take him and don't think twice about it. Nikola Topic, partially torn ACL, suffered during his domestic season in the Adriatic League, I believe. But 6'6" point guard. Again, this is what the Magic like. They have an Anthony Black. We have an Anthony Black at home, but Topic is a much more skilled playmaker. Eventually, I think the Magic want Anthony Black to be a playmaker. They did not use him like that his rookie year. So if I'm a little skeptical on the skill that Black was supposed to have, this is why. Let's get to the real guys that I want to talk about today. I want to make sure I mention those names and get to players that I think really fit what the Magic are looking for. The big name on the board is Devin Carter. Devin Carter from Providence. It sounds like he is going to go on the lottery. So it's another kind of riser who has gone from where the Magic were picking to kind of out of the range where the Magic were picking. But a 6'3" point guard, gritty, tough defender, long wingspan, 6 foot 2.25 without shoes, according to the combine, 6 foot 8.75 wingspan. So big, long defender. Has really improved as a three-point shooter, made 37.7% of his threes after 2 sub 30% shooting seasons. So really improved as his game went on. And an excellent rebounder. Just, averaged like 8 rebounds per game as a guard, 6-7 rebounds per game as a guard. This is, again, a guy who does multiple things. Can be a spot-up shooter. You're not going to need him to be on the ball as much. Maybe not the playmaker and passer that you typically think of from a point guard. But Devin Carter does things that players his size don't typically do. And, if you trust him to make good decisions. Look, there's a reason why he's probably out of the Magic's range at this point. If you trust him to make those decisions, he's going to be a guy that you're looking at. I think Tejan Salon is going to be gone. Just kind of another big guy. Jacoby Walter of Baylor is someone to really think about too. Jacoby Walter is kind of thought of among at least the draft experts that I've read and talked to, kind of like the safe 3-and-D player. He's probably not going to be much more than that. But again, you're drafting 18. You're not looking to hit a home run necessarily. Jacoby Walter is just projected to be a two-way guard. 34.1% from three last year, 79.2% from foul line, so there's room for improvement there. Has some creation responsibility, and has the measurables the Magic like. Like, it has a positive wingspan, just does all those things. He's athletic, finishing around the basket. It's just going to be about, can he do more than being a 3-and-D guy? The other guy to look at is Johnny Furphy from Kansas. I think we've talked a little bit about him. Johnny Furphy has kind of been, now that Tristan da Silva is considered above the Magic's draft range, Johnny Furphy's kind of become the favorite target among mock drafts for the Orlando Magic. Furphy had a solid year last year, averaged just 9 points per game, shot 35.2% from three, but found his groove in Big 12 play, 11.4 points per game, 36.5% from three. You like to, when you're looking at college stats, you do typically like to just focus on conference play because that lops off any outliers in non-conference games against directional state university. You get rid of kind of the fluff by taking out the non-conference games and just focusing on conference schedule. Furphy is widely considered to have a high basketball IQ. He is really good cutting. Like, he's really smart cutter. He does have a sense of when to take up space. I do worry about his shooting. I'm not as sold on his shooting as others might be. And his measurables aren't good. 6'7.5" without shoes, 6'8" wingspan. So very, doesn't have that plus wingspan that we know the Magic typically like. But Furphy is capable of guarding multiple positions. I don't think that should necessarily disqualify him at his height. He did have some bad athletic measurements, if I remember correctly, but he is an athletic finisher on the court. Can get to the basket again, off cuts. I think there's a lot of room for improvement with him and a lot of work that he needs to do. I am not the biggest. I go hot and cold on Johnny Furphy. Some days I really like him. Some days I'm just like, I just don't think he checks off the boxes. But in this instance, he is someone who can do a bunch of different things. Another guy to look at, when you're looking at bigs, Kel'el Ware. Among these centers in this draft, I'm not a Zach Edey guy. I know people who are Zach Edey people. Zach Edey is kind of a litmus test for a lot of people. Kel'el Ware is this. If the Magic are drafting a center in this, I am leaning toward Kel'el Ware. I have heard bad things about the motor questions from some draft experts, and maybe that's just opinions that haven't been shaken. He's still very, very young, so it's not enough for me to be scared off of him, but you got to do your homework on him, and you got to really understand who the person is and whether he's going to work, whether he's going to enter the NBA and say, I made it, or whether he's going to keep working and get better. The fact that he transferred from Oregon after a really bad year and had a really good season in Indiana where he showed that mobility, 1.9 blocks per game, 9.9 rebounds per game. He averaged like 15, 16 points per game. Showed a willingness to expand his game to start hitting jumpers. He made a few jumpers, made a few threes at Indiana. He is an above-the-rim player, can play around the basket. Kel'el Ware, if the personality profile checks out, definitely a player to have on your list, definitely a player to keep an eye on as someone who can do a lot of things at center. He has the mobility and the size to get out on the perimeter and help on guards. That's ultimately what the Magic are looking for. You know, the reason why Wendell Carter is just someone they're not going to quit quite yet is Wendell Carter does decently defending the paint, not a rim protector, but does well defending the paint and gets out and defends the perimeter well. He can. That's a lot of trust that the Magic have in him and a lot of trust that they really, really like. Some other names I want to make sure I mention. We're going to talk free agents here in the last segment. Bub Carrington, Carlton Carrington. We talked a little bit about him, 6'4" guard, really showed up, especially toward the end of the season. The ACC averaged 13.8 points per game, 4.1 assists per game, 32.2% shooting, but he's widely considered a good catch and shoot player. You know, in college, you got to create a lot more. So he's probably taking some bad shots, 78.5% shooting from the line. Really, you know, Carrington could be a really good add if the Magic are looking to add another point guard in this draft. I'm a little skeptical on that part of the equation, but you take what the talent gives you. I'm a big Jalen Tyson fan, but he's got to prove he can be more than an on-ball scorer. And that's really kind of where I'm at with kind of your do-everything players. We'll go over who my actual targets are next week as we get closer and closer to the draft. But, you know, the Magic are looking for guys who are multi-positional. Again, like that's not the reason why I'm not a fan of Zach Edey or Yves Missi. Pacome Daddier might be another option, another really raw player, good length, good defensive instincts, no shot right now. So that's probably the thing with him. But, you know, the Magic are going to have to be very specific about what they're looking for in this draft and what they think they need. And again, being multi-positional, being versatile, being able to do things that are not typical for your size or for your position, that's the kind of stuff the Magic are looking for. And look, I named 4 or 5 players here. There are options in this draft that fit that. There are options for the Magic in this draft that would fit that. Now we'll see who ends up making it to them. If Topic makes it, that would be a coup. Jared McCain is another player that I think a lot of Magic fans like. It's not just about one skill. It's about the whole package. It's about, yes, you have the three-point shooting skill, but you're also a defender. You're also willing to screen. You're also willing to rebound at your position. That's the whole package the Magic are looking for. And again, that's what the Celtics found successful. So what does that mean for free agency? We'll talk a little about free agency and how the Magic are going to use this philosophy to find their additions. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So I think, today is Draft Tuesday. So I want to make sure we focus a little bit on the draft, talk a little bit about some of the prospects that we're going to be looking at. And some of these names are going to be familiar. I think I brought some of these names up several times. I think we're kind of settling in on a list of 5, 6, maybe 7 or 8 players that the Magic are really considering. And, I'll go through some names that I don't like. Next week will be kind of the whole all-encompassing draft talk. Maybe later this week we'll do some of that too, some prospects I don't like maybe. I think we've talked about a few of them, like Zach Edey. I haven't talked much about Isaiah Collier. There are a few guys that I'm just kind of out on completely. But this philosophy of finding players who do it all, it's not just about the draft. It's going to be the thing that colors free agency. We will talk Klay Thompson tomorrow. And there's a lot of reasons why Klay Thompson fits. But this is part of the equation too. The Magic want players who can play both sides of the floor. The Magic don't just want shooting. They want players who can play multiple positions that fit into this overall philosophy. And Anthony Parker and Jeff Weltman, when they have talked to the media, and we'll probably hear from Jeff Weltman next week before the draft. We'll hear from him after the draft for sure. But when Anthony Parker and Jeff Weltman have spoken this offseason, they have talked about this too. They're not skipping steps. Jeff Weltman said the day after the season ended, we are going to stick to our North Star. We know who are Magic players, who are Magic people, and we're going to stick with those players. And that may not excite you as fans. We talked yesterday about how the Magic should be thinking big, and the Magic have to do things. They can't just sit still. The rest of the league's going to do something too. They have a starter spot to fill, so they're going to do something big either way. But it's not going to be doing that just to do it. They're not trying to keep up with the Joneses. They're not trying to go faster than they need to go. They're looking for the right fits. And honestly, when you look at the Boston Celtics, that's one of the lessons too. The Celtics waited for the right fits. They stuck with their roster when everyone was saying, oh, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can't play together. You need to break them up, or you need to add this player or that player. They traded a key piece in Marcus Smart. They identified that the problem was they needed more shooting. They need more consistent play from their guard. They went out and got Derek White at the trade deadline. They went out and got Drew Holiday when that opportunity came around. That's why they won the championship, to be honest. They were aggressive and went for Kristaps Porzingis when the time came. The Celtics were aggressive, looking for players who fit what they wanted to do and who they wanted to be. And that's what the Magic are going to do too. Now, I've said this a lot. We've gone through a few players. Malik Monk, D'Angelo Russell, Tyus Jones. We're going to hit Klay Thompson tomorrow. There is no perfect fit. Tyus Jones seems like a great fit offensively as a shooter and a playmaker. On the small side, it's never really been proven, especially as a starter, as a good defender. I don't know if that eliminates him completely, but that makes me less excited. D'Angelo Russell is obviously an incredible shooter. A great shooter, in fact. Great scorer. Someone who has accepted and learned to play off of someone like LeBron James, but still has that star streak in him. But every playoffs, he has struggled. And ultimately, the Magic need players who are going to perform in the playoffs. I'm not against D'Angelo Russell, but yeah, I think there's reasons to be skeptical. We talked about Paul George. We talked about Malik Monk. Malik Monk does seem like, at least among the big name free agents, the kind of guy that does a little bit of everything. He learned how to play point guard and improved as a playmaker with the Sacramento Kings. So he's a shooter, but also a playmaker, also a creator, also a passer. That gives him that extra skill. Now, is he the defender the Magic like? Is he the size the Magic like? Especially next to Jalen Suggs. That's the bigger question with Malik Monk. Whether the Magic feel like they can welcome Malik Monk into their roster and teach him Magic defense. Teach him to be a defender. And I'll tell you this. If the Magic interview him, if the Magic's intel tells them that they cannot, he's not coming to Orlando. At the end of the day, the Magic's identity is their defense, and they're not going to compromise that. The Magic probably are not winning very much if they're 12th in offensive rating and down to like 6th or 7th or 8th in defensive rating. They still need an elite defense to be the kind of team that they need to be. And of course, we'll get to this tomorrow, but with Klay Thompson, can he still defend at the high level that the Magic need? Because he's a really expensive 3-and-D player, essentially. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. And the same goes for the mid-level free agents that we talked about. You know, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's going to get $20 million a year. Are you going to pay $20 million a year for him? You know, he isn't the splashiest name. I wouldn't want him to be the biggest free agent acquisition of the season, but great 3-and-D player, 2-time NBA champion. He would help this team a lot. And it would not surprise me if that's kind of where the Magic go, a little more conservative, add some players off the bench. There you go. Buddy Hield as a mid-level guy, exactly the same way. You can go down the list and find flaws with everybody. But at the end of the day, the Magic are looking to hold to their philosophies because that's what the Celtics did. Every player the Celtics acquired filled either a very specific role, a very specific niche, or just does what the Celtics do. Makes good decisions, is able to work on the ball and off, defends within the scheme effectively. That's why the Celtics are champions. Because they didn't compromise who they are. And I don't think the Magic will either. And if there's a lesson to come from this championship, it's that who you are matters. Who you are defines you. And who you are is ultimately why you're lifting the golden trophy at the end of the season. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun places on podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And of course, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, for even more Orlando Magic content. I'll be wrapping up player evaluations this week. Hopefully getting to some draft profiles. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to that in time, but we'll be talking and ruminating on all these issues over on my Patreon page. Again, you can find that at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. And as always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to me, be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and now available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Day is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Day now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Also, be sure to check out our friends Locked On Celtics as the celebration over the 18th championship in Boston Celtics history is on. Our friend John Corrales covers the Boston Celtics like nobody else does. He literally wrote the book on Celtics history, and also wrote the book on this championship run as well. Also, literally, check him out on Locked On Celtics, and congratulations to the Boston Celtics once again on winning the NBA championship. Just remember who closed the Boston Garden because we like to remind you of that. But that's going to do it for me today. On tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, the one you're all waiting for, the case for and against signing Klay Thompson. We'll dive deeper into some of those numbers I hinted at earlier today, why Klay Thompson may not be the answer for the Orlando Magic or why he might be. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman. Mike. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.